Hey guys, we are taking a break from our regular, daily, nightly recap, as if there really is any kind of strategy here. But, anyways, people keep asking me about my career. People keep asking, are you just an Instagram psychologist? Who are you? Are you for real? So, I thought I would take you through how I became a clinical and forensic psychologist for celebrities and high profile people, and also mass murderers and some of the most brutal individuals I have ever met in my entire fucking life. We'll break this up into two segments, maybe. Let's go through education, and then on another day, we will go through clinical experiences and jobs. I think salary, that might be interesting to people. But let's start with education. Okay, so I completed a bachelor's of science in Colorado, but I didn't do the whole thing in Colorado. I studied abroad to Northern England. Amazing, recommend it for anyone. When I was there, I got to study so much interesting stuff. It was so different. I lived in a castle. The dorms were literally like old castles. There weren't showers. It was incredible. Walking on campus, it was just this whole other world. Have you ever heard of a paternoster? I think that's what it's called. So it's like they have these elevators that don't stop. They keep cycling through. And my friend and I got on one of these elevators, of course, two fucking Americans. And we didn't get off in time. You on the first floor, we didn't step off. And we were like really anxious because we'd never been on like an ever moving elevator. And so we didn't step off. She freaked out, dove off. I was like, help me. I'm stuck. I'm fucked. And as it was like going down and I couldn't like grasp myself, I couldn't get off. I'm hysterically screaming. It goes down and it goes down to what would be like the basement area and nobody sees. And I'm like, that's it. I'm just going to be like, I'm going to be squashed to my death. That's it. That's it. I'm so fucking ignorant and naive and Canadian American. Anyways, so I'm like screaming. She's screaming for help. And then all of a sudden, instead of it going like squishing, it just goes like this and it comes back up and I just step off. So yeah, that's like just an experience. Also, I was like told by my family members to pack a year's worth of tampons because they didn't have them in England. Yeah, we were pretty fucking naive. The orange veil was over my head, the Orange County veil. The ignorance of Americans is shocking, and I was one of them. And I have to say, traveling around the world and educating myself, actual education, university education from really smart worldly people changed my views, and I could no longer be ignorant or concretized into specific categories. I then became a person who was perpetually living in the gray area, and I will always live in the gray area, which is why I think I'm good in this field. I see both sides. There are goods and bads on both sides, but there's always a little more bad on one side, and that's usually who loses. And it's usually the person who does more harm and the person who lacks the insight, the person who tries to get away with it, the person who thinks that their shit don't stink. But it all comes out on psychological assessments anyway. So I did this amazing study abroad program, and then I had to do my master's degree. That would be like the next logical step, right? Because a bachelor's degree means nothing in America these days. But I couldn't do my bachelor's degree because I had a cyst on my ovary and I had the cyst removed in England. I thought it was okay. It grew back. I could like feel it growing back. It was huge. So I actually had to leave England. I go back to America and they do the surgery again and they find gauze inside of my belly. They find that there are things in there that shouldn't be. And the surgery was horrible. They took my left ovary, the tumor, the cyst, it was a dermoid, it was still there, non-cancerous, but it was growing and it was growing rapidly and it was taking over my ovary. So it was scary, right? So I have this surgery and I think everything's fine. I go to Steinmart to go discount shopping and I just pass the fuck out. So we're back in the hospital. I'm not awake. I am comatose, not looking good. I am severely septic and my parents are signing away my organs and I'm going to die. That's what everybody thought. So they actually teach my case in the medical schools down here in Southern California. So I woke up. Wow. I woke up with a colostomy. I woke up with a colostomy. And what I found out was that the doctors, the surgeons, the highly educated surgeons, whoever says that you don't need to go to university is a fucking idiot. So the highly educated surgeons and all of the residents and the interns. And God, there were a lot of people involved. Took my intestines out of my stomach and they siphoned through them to see where there was a perforation. Certainly a huge perforation, which is why I was septic. So I was just basically shitting into my stomach. And the only way they could resolve that was with a colostomy. So here's where the infamy comes on. They could reverse the colostomy in 5 months, and I was A-okay, which is absolutely amazing and record time. So I'm like 24, 25 years old. I don't remember, but it was life changing. It was the first time I thought about ending my life. It was the most depressed I've ever been in my life. I had a surgery after surgery, and these aren't just like little surgeries. These are 8, 12-hour surgeries where you are cut from the pubic bone up to your belly button and you have to learn to walk again. You have to teach yourself how to walk again. It is horrible. So once I got through all of that, I returned to school in Colorado, finished the mathematical stuff because did you know it's not the same as England? Yeah, another American ignorance. But I also fell in love with psychology. So I went back to England. I went to London. I went to the University of London, University College London, and I studied Freudian psychoanalytic psychology with an emphasis in dream interpretation. Yes, that exists. It was a lot of fun, and I got to travel all over the place because they don't really care if you come to class or take tests. I got to write my first dissertation, hundreds and hundreds of pages, and it was like kind of how psychoanalysis like doesn't really work. Very interesting shit. I had to come back to America because I wanted to get a doctorate degree and there was a 5-year wait in England because of socialized healthcare. So of course, I didn't want to wait because I have no fucking patience. If you know, you know. So I came back to America and I enrolled in Loma Linda University and I did another fucking master's degree. And that is when I started working with the severely mentally ill who have committed violent crimes. And my first practical experience was the Los Angeles County Jail. It was horrifying. I've talked about this a lot on many podcasts, but the stories of flaccid penises, apples being thrown at my head, murdering of cellmates, riots occurring, people mixing pee and poo together and smearing it on the wall and writing me letters, me having to talk to somebody's auditory or visual hallucination because I couldn't actually talk to them because they were that ill. The most unmedicated, well, human beings I've ever seen in my life to date. And that was like it was like a year ago or close to 20. Oh my God. Anyways, I'm totally getting a consultation for like a neck lift and facelift next week because that's happening. So that was it. I was hooked. It was an incredible year. It was a terrifying year. I cried almost every day. I cried almost every day when I ran out of gas in Watts or Compton and people would bang on my Ford Focus, my baby blue Ford Focus and scream, what the fuck is a white girl doing in this area? Yeah, not a great commute heading back to Orange County. And it was a wonderful fucking reality check of the life I had been living and how isolated and sheltered and fucking ignorant I was. And that's what allowed me to see how ignorant so much of America is. So much of America that is allowed to vote, who has never talked to a gay person, who has never talked to a trans person, who has never talked to a Black person, and God forbid, talk to a Puerto Rican person. It was a wake up call. I was one of them, and I did not want to be one of them. So I continued to pursue this career and I stacked up amazing practicums, clinical rotations, all unpaid, FYI. I went on to do my doctorate in psychology with an emphasis in clinical work, gestalt therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and forensic work. So the interplay of serious mental illness, violent felonies, and psychology. I loved it. I love it. I still love it. Statistics was so hard. I thought I sucked at it, and everyone told me I got like really, really good grades. That's where I think RFK is really fucking failing because he does not understand how to read a scientific article. And that's why these articles coming out or his misinterpretation, his information on these scientific articles about Tylenol, it's driving me crazy because we are trained in our programs how to read these articles and how to understand these articles. And the fact that this man does not know how to isolate data or normative samples or the different things that we throw into SPSS statistical software, it flabbergasts me. And where are the people coaching him? Where are the people telling him, at least at the talking points, at least telling him what to say? Because he is so grossly inaccurate in his interpretation of these studies. And yes, I've done studies. Yes, I've published. One of my largest publications was on the treatment of schizophrenia, and if it's better to treat somebody with schizophrenia in a group with all people who have schizophrenia, or if they should be in a heterogeneous group with different kinds of mental health diagnoses, and that would help them gain insight and coping skills and work together. And yes, I published my dissertation as well. I published my dissertation of actual real people, but I published it as non-human subjects because it was after I had collected the data. Yes. Oh my God. Can you believe it? I understood it that much to manipulate it in a way that I could get past IRB and publish and complete my dissertation. Yes. People cite the fucking work. I helped write a pop model with my now husband where we wrote how to structure group therapy for fast paced inpatient groups. You need mental health intervention, even if you're only on a 5150, if you're only on a 72-hour hold. But what does that look like? There's no structure there. Yes, we published that. We researched that. Oh my God, did we? We also fell in love. There was a lot of sex. That was that was an epic few years. So yeah, I met my husband in my doctorate program, really husky voice. Chased after that in my Victoria's Secret clothing when I was asking him to have study parties, study dates, and he would come over and no one else would be there. He knew. He would be like relining his fishing lines because he's from Illinois. He didn't want to get into a relationship because he wanted to study, but I didn't care. So as you could see, I don't really have a filter, and I really am just going to go after the sparkly thing because it's so fucking fun and life is short. So I finished this doctorate and I actually had an incredible internship. So you have to finish all the schooling and shit, and then you have to go to an internship. We interviewed as a couple. So we interviewed all around these different places. I think we went to 11 different states. It's thousands and thousands of dollars. And then you kind of rank order what your preference is, but the places that are interviewing you rank order their preference too. I have to note that like Washington doesn't really believe in interviews. And so that was like more of a roundtable discussion because they are pretty woke. It was a little too much for me. The interview in DC was so intimidating. I did not think I was going to get that. St. Elizabeth's Hospital, DC, White House cases, incredible cases of some of the most disturbing mental illness I've ever seen in my life. But you're also in the setting. Google St. Elizabeth's Hospital. It is beautiful. It is amazing. Brick buildings, old school, incredible environment, so different than Southern California. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was like the military. I felt like they were breaking me down. And then at the end, they wanted to build me back up. And I did not appreciate how gruesome the training was. Now, what I do appreciate is that I'm a fucking amazing forensic psychologist because of the training, but I didn't apply to work there after that year. And they didn't understand. They seemed dumbfounded that I didn't apply. And I said, you treated me like shit for most of the year. And that was a part of like their process. No, no, no. Not going to work on me. So anyways, I took that experience and I left and I actually started working with high risk sexual offenders in an outpatient setting. So I was doing the violence and sexual violence risk assessments for offenders that were let out to assess the likeliness of their recidivism or doing the crime again. One part that really sucked was when they didn't show up for group or they didn't show up or do what they had to do. I had to report them to their parole officer and they had to go back to prison. Once they got out of prison, they had to come back to groups with me. Not great. But I did learn about things like how you can test sexual offenders. You can see how they are lying. You can use what we would call kind of a condom polygraph on individuals. not administered by me, but there are people who actually put it on. I just interpret the data and read the data. But if I show you a bunch of pictures of an age range from children to adults, the condom's going to tell us how you feel about them, not you, because you're a fucking liar, because you're probably a pedo. So, very interesting things that I learned. And then from there, I went on to actually start my career. My internship was, I got $26,000 for the year. My fellowship, I want to say it was like in the 30s. And then the big bucks came when I became a staff psychologist at a Atascadero State Hospital. So that's kind of where the education piece left off. We have continuing education, of course, but the hardcore, let me get my degrees, let me walk, let me pay for all of this shit, that was over. I have $500,000 of student debt. I have met all of the markers for student loan forgiveness. But when Trump came into office, the Department of Education put that on pause and froze it. So I should have been forgiven. All the money should have gone away. All the debt should have gone away a while ago, and it did not. So that sucks. I'm really hoping that Trump allows that to move forward because I devoted 10 years of my life to government service. And I did that largely because I knew it would pay off my student loans. And for him to put a pause to that program is heartbreaking. I'm glad I served the government, but I also didn't learn shit about business. I didn't learn shit about how to make money. And I didn't learn shit about how to live the rest of my life free of a government that is now utter fucking chaos. So that's the education piece of it all. Next up, we will do actual career and how I got to the point where I am sitting across from some of the most high profile celebrities, politicians, athletes in the world and seeing if they're lying or if they're telling the truth. Catch you next time.